Okay. All right. So let's get started. Officially welcome to another amazing webinar with Symplast, the company of beautiful business. My name is Jessica Wisner. I am the head of client education and product evangelism here at Symplast. And I am so excited to introduce Shannon Weinstein to the chat. So she is here today to talk a little bit about your P&L, which is a topic that I dealt with when I was on the med spa side. Looking at that sometimes can be a little scary, but it's such an important conversation to have. So Shannon is a CPA and fractional CFO who specializes in helping med spa and aesthetic practice owners think like a CFO and operate like a CEO. As the founder of Keep What You Earn and host of a top 1% globally ranked podcast, Shannon has built a reputation for making financial strategy accessible, actionable, and actually interesting. Very important. She brings 15 years of experience of Big Four and Fortune 50 experience and translates all of it into language business owners can use. And my favorite sentence of your bio is her superpower, because we all need a superpower. Her superpower is telling practice owners the truth about their numbers and giving them a clear plan for what to do about it. So, Shannon, the floor is yours. Let you do a quick intro to yourself, and then I got a question right out of the gate as soon as you're ready.
Yeah, I'm ready. I think you nailed the intro. I'm happy to be here. I love working with aesthetic practices. I'm a CPA by profession, but I'm an entrepreneur by nature. I also run my own business. So bringing that into the perspective in everything we do, it's first and foremost. So I like to say I'm a strategist first, accountant second. I just happen to have those three letters. So don't discount me yet in terms of, oh God, this is a CPA talking. This is going to be boring. Nope. I want to talk about business, but I want to bring in the context of the numbers because that's the stuff that actually drives your decisions.
Fantastic. Okay, so right out the gate, I really, in order to keep this conversation to what everyone can have a takeaway and to set the stage, if you could have every medical aesthetic practice owner, plastic surgery, med spa, or the like, track just 3 financial metrics besides revenue, what would they be?
Okay. So, first thing I have to say is when we're tracking metrics and we're tracking financials, I have to kind of give an overarching thought on keeping your accounting books in what's called the accrual accounting method, because that's what's going to make the metrics valuable to manage your practice, not just to file your taxes. I will explain that later, but I would just cover all of that with under accrual as like my sub note. But I would start with margin by service, gross margin by service. So I like to call this your offer profit in my own language because it's the profit that you generate from everything you offer in your practice. So if that's aesthetic treatments, if that's injectables, I want to know by category that every time I do an injectable appointment, whether it be Botox, neuromodulator, whatever, that I know I'm going to retain a certain amount of profit for each of those treatments. And I know I'm going to retain a certain amount of profit for my aesthetic treatments and surgeries. And once you understand that and you understand service mix, you can optimize your profit and engineer your profit the way you want to instead of just reacting to what happened. Because, by the way, not all of those are treated equal. So there's a huge spectrum of different profit margins for these types of services. So that's really important. Number 2 would be what I call lifetime value of your patient. Now, you may have heard this in marketing speak, but what I actually mean is the lifetime gross profit, the lifetime gross margin of your treatment plan. Hear me out. So when your patient comes in, I like to say, what is the lifetime value of that patient based on their treatment plan? If the lifetime value is only, they come in for injectables 3 or 4 times a year, and they can only come for 2 years, their lifetime value is much smaller than a customer who comes in, a patient who comes in and they elevate into microneedling and other things and possibly surgical treatment, right? Or they're in surgery treatment and they're cascading into med spa to maintain results. So let's figure out how to optimize that lifetime gross profit of a patient and maximize that before we talk about revenue and leads and all that stuff. And I'd say the third thing is net monthly cash flow. That's going to help you measure what you're actually generating in the practice and what you're actually going to be able to take home. So I'd say that's a really good indicator of the health of the practice is what you're basically growing in your garden ready to harvest.
I love that. And listen, I know we got slides, but I got questions already for myself.
Uh-huh.
I think the accrual accounting is something that I know I work with a lot of practices, right? As you know, part of my work here at Symplast. Accrual accounting is really foreign to a lot of people. And I know sometimes that's a hurdle, especially when you have someone coming maybe from a more traditional med spa or they're a
Mm-hmm.
new business owner and they're just thinking money in, money out. How does
Mm-hmm.
accrual-based accounting differ from traditional cash-based accounting that most people are kind of like drawn to normally?
So I would look at accrual accounting as things happen when you earn them through what you do. And cash-based accounting is when cha-ching, the bank account gets hit. So cash basis is when cash moves. Accrual is what we call when you earn your income. So let's say if you're paying for treatments, let's just say there's a prepaid package of some kind and somebody pays $300 for 3 treatments. On the accrual basis, you're going to recognize $100 for each treatment when it is delivered, when the patient comes in, $100 each time. Whereas cash basis, as soon as you sell that package, $300 goes on the income. Typically, that's how you're taxed, by the way. Tax usually follows a cash basis. But what's more important is when you connect that $100 per treatment with when the injector gets paid, right? Or when the provider gets paid. So now I'm bringing in that revenue in the same month that I'm running the payroll. And now it all kind of tells the right story that I'm making this money for a treatment and it cost me this much money to deliver it. And it's all happening in the same month. When that's not happening, you've got all this front loaded revenue and all this back loaded payroll costs. And you're like, where did the money go? Why aren't we making any profit this month? Why do I have labor, but I don't have revenue? Well, because you got the revenue before and now it's all out of whack. So you have to kind of align the timing of when you're delivering your service and when you're paying the payroll associated with that, matching those up so that you can actually tell the whole story of what you really did in profit.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, one of the things when I was on the med spa side, we switched from thinking cash to then thinking accrual. And it was such a challenge for us, especially gift cards. That one was a tough one. Don't even get me started. It took us forever to figure out how to like rebalance everything after so long.
I'll do a seminar on that later.
It's
a whole thing, but
gift cards accounting. That is a whole different bag of worms. But I think, you know, your second point, or was the third, I lost track already, treatment plans, right? So when you're talking that lifetime value, gross value of a patient and how much you're earning on them over time, it's getting the practice owner or the med spa practitioner out of thinking transactional, but more about a long-term relationship, that full patient journey of treatment to transformation, right? To coin a term, I think,
and it's results focused.
Yeah.
It's results focused, not just revenue. So like if you're focused on volume, not in the face, but if you're focused on volume of number of leads and you're going, okay, I want to bring in more leads. Why? Because they're all spending $500 with me. Or you could get the people you already have who already love you to spend another $2,000. And I'm not saying to sell them medical treatments they don't need by any stretch. I'm saying maybe we better understand the results in the consult phase and we kind of have a 3-phase approach of let's start with this, then I would recommend this, and then let's reassess and go here. But having follow-ups to their treatment plan, kind of like, I don't know, a doctor would, and saying, hey, let's check in on your progress. Let's do some before and after, like phased in photos. Really enjoy those results that you've gotten from, say, your microneedling. Now it's like, hey, I really want to try, you know, Profilo, or I really want to try, you know, what I'm not advertising any of these individual treatments. I'm just thinking like, okay, well, what if we try this? What if we try that? And it's like, oh, that would be a really good follow on because your face and your skin reacted well to this. Why don't we try this as a next level if you're really enjoying that result? There is nothing wrong with that. It's not super salesy, but it's more about maximizing the results and the value of each patient so that you don't have to keep constantly selling people just to come in the door to begin trusting you. The trust is the hardest hurdle to overcome. Once you overcome the trust hurdle, it's way easier to unlock additional treatments from your existing patients. But that trust hurdle is huge because, especially if you're in the surgical side, like you're going to see your patients naked, exposed, vulnerable, and flawed. And that takes a lot of guts to do. And it's like they might as well continue receiving treatment from you because you've already overcome that relationship hurdle. So it's a huge thing to be able to maximize value over volume.
Yeah. I mean, so eloquently put, I think. So real quick feedback for you, and then I do want to get you to get through these slides at least
Yeah,
a
yeah.
little bit, at least a little bit.
Yeah.
I've got a nice mix in the audience of plastic surgery and combo practices.
Excellent.
I've got one that started out surgery and is now adding more med spa. And I think that's the tricky part, because that's where you're really going from, you do the surgery and then you're adding in more of those treatment plans long term. And that's where you can really get that quality versus quantity of patients
Mhm.
and patient care, which then gives you that better profitability.
And that's where lifetime value comes in. I just want to add this before I keep going, that the when you're doing only surgery, you're working on the value of the treatment itself, right? The conversion of the treatment and then getting, an optimal treatment for the patient. But typically, like you might end the relationship after one surgery, right? And there might be a long-term follow-up later. But it's not like a med spa where they're coming in every 3 months getting surgery done. So there's a very different approach when it comes to med spa that you can't translate from surgical. You have to have a different business model that helps elongate the relationship and nurtures them the way that you normally aren't used to with surgery, because it's not natural for them to come back that frequently. You have to drive that retention on the med spa side, and that might be a new introduction of focus for you. And that's really important.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Next slide. And then I've got more
Yeah.
questions to come. And please, chat, put some questions in and I will make sure they get answered.
Yeah. Even if it's outside of what the slides are saying, like I'm happy to answer anything on
Okay.
this. So, what I came here to talk about today, though, is actually my third bullet point that I had mentioned on the three metrics, which is cash flow. So if you haven't heard the phrase like net cash flow, if you heard me say net cash flow and you were like, oh, net profit, no, actually, no, that's only part of the story. Hear me out. So profit, I love to say profit is an opinion, cash is a fact. Profit is on paper the result of you operating your practice and the result of the income it generates and the expenses it pays, right? Very simply, profit minus, or excuse me, I'm already screwing that up. Income minus expenses equals profit. Very simple. And when you feel like, oh, there's no profit in there, we have to figure out why, number one. But you can be profitable and you can have crappy cash flow. They are not the same thing at all. And I'm going to explain why and why cash flow is more important. Profit is one element of cash flow, one reason cash flow can go up or down, but there are many others. And this is where a lot of med spas, especially, and surgical practices go wrong, because you don't take into account the other excuses that cash leaks out. And you're generating profit that's just enough to catch up with your cash flow and not enough to pay yourself. So if you feel like I'm just catching up to be able to run the practice, that I haven't really extracted what I want to in terms of cash out of the practice to feel like it actually pays me, I want you to say something in the chat, like me, yes. Because if you feel like you're not making enough as a surgeon, as a spa, med spa owner and operator, let me know. Because that's basically everybody. In my opinion, this is the most important thing. So
We got
let's
some
explain. What's that? Me.
Yeah.
A lot of me's.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So profit is the net result of what you made and spent to run. And then cash flow, I call the metabolism of the bank account. It's the speed and magnitude that cash flows in and out. So cash flow infuses timing of the money. So let's say, when is rent due? When are payroll weeks? When are your loans on your equipment due? When are you supposed to pay certain things, your rent, whatever? The timing of all of that with respect to when the revenue comes in matters. It matters. So if, like, for example, you run a membership or some type of recurring offer and all of those things come the 25th of the month, right? Everybody, let's just say everybody gets charged the 25th of the month for their membership. but your rent is due the 1st, your loans are due the 10th, your payroll runs on the 15th, and you're like, oh no, I'm now, all my negatives happen first and then my positives happen after. That's not good. And I haven't saved up enough money from last month's positives because I've just paid all the rent and I just paid all the things. Now I'm down to like a negative cash, or I'm down to a lower cash than I want to be. And cash flow is managing those ins and outs that go beyond just profit. So that includes like loan payments, that includes inventory, that includes just the timing of everything, including paying the owner, right? Taking your distributions out at the right time. So it's about finding the right timing of all those different pieces.
Yeah, a really interesting comment in the chat too about, going month to month just covering payroll. And I think, and I hate to bring it back to gift cards, but like I can think back to, we were a med spa, we also had a day spa. And so we would get a big influx of cash at the holidays, right? And then it was a matter of like, but that was like expenses went out throughout the year. And then we'd have a lull in January where everyone dropped off after that holiday rush. That's kind of what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
When it comes to cash flow.
Yeah, because, okay, so here's the thing. Please don't get convinced that when you sell gift cards, prepaids, memberships, whatever you want, to accelerate cash flow. That is a good thing. Accelerating cash flow, getting paid inflows faster and sooner is perfect. And then paying slower is great, right? Don't pay your credit card bill before it's due. You win no points in heaven. Okay, guys? You might get some type of cash back reward, fine. But like, let's not go crazy. Like, you have until the due date, take until the due date, whatever. But like, collect money faster, pay it out soon, pay it out slower. Now, this is key. When you have gift cards and other things like that, just remember that there is the other side of the equation. So you're collecting all the money up front, but that money is basically earmarked where a portion of it is going to pay the payroll to deliver those services. So it's going to feel like a quick hit of like, yay, awesome. I got money in around the holidays. Everyone bought gift cards. Woohoo. I'm Scrooge McDuck swimming in money. This is great. And then like 3 months later, oh my gosh, why? Like, payroll was insane. We made no money, but I had to pay 2 payrolls with no revenue. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you pre-collected the revenue. So it's not new revenue. Please stop treating it like, oh my God, I did so good selling this month because we pre-sold all these services. Remember, this is not new money. This is just future money prepaid. So yeah, this is like all just accelerated. It's the same dollars, guys. It's not new dollars you get to play with. And that's what people get convinced by. They're so excited to see the bank account flush, but their cash flow, because they're not doing a forecast and they're not looking 3 months in the future to look at, oh, but it's going to dwindle because I have to save this for the payroll expenses.
Yeah. And I think that's one of those things with it, because we're in a prepaid service business, that right. It really can be a struggle for practices, because you do get those influxes of cash after you do a big promotion, you do a big, holiday campaign, or, you do an event, you get that big influx. And then I always like to, and tell me if I'm even accurate in this, please. I tell people it's almost like it's that golden pot of money that's sitting there waiting to be taken out of. So you just think this is your golden bucket, but it is for later. And you don't actually say, hey, I actually earned this money until you deliver the service.
Right. And you have to kind of convince yourself that mentally, because it's like having a giant thing of Toll House cookies on the counter. And you're like, you're not supposed to eat, like, these are supposed to be for freshly baked, supposed to be for 3 months from now, pretending they don't go stale. But these are for when your mom visits 3 months from now. And it's like, she'll never know if I eat them now. I'll just cook a new batch before she gets here. It's fine. No, you have to be disciplined about that. And I'm not saying you can't spend the money, but I'm saying you have to factor it into your plan that revenue will not be coming in on the weeks that these are redeemed. So you have to be very conscious of that in part of your projection. And when you're looking future, to say, oh, this is not new money. Like, I'm not also going to collect this money in the future and today. You can't double dip. So you have to make sure that you're making up for that, and that you're building a revenue pipeline that will make up for the fact that that's happening, that you'll still collect revenue in each week or each month, despite the pre-sales of things, so that you're not feeling that dip. And a lot of people try to manage that because there is a summer slump a bit. And I think it's really hard when you're combining a summer slump with people redeeming. It's like, oh my gosh, like I'm already not super booked. And now all the people coming in are redeeming old money. So
Yeah.
that's really challenging. So I'd like to just say balance out how much you're selling those, like how much of your revenue is coming from these prepaid things, or how much your cash flow, I should say. And then just balancing that out with real time service so that you're never just playing catch up. What do they say? Borrowing from Peter to pay Paul, you know?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
just keep that in mind. And then also these elements at the bottom here, make sure that your cash flow can support, AKA your profit you generate from your practice needs to be able to pay for inventory and equipment, because that's not on your P&L, believe it or not. So your inventory and equipment, those costs go into the balance sheet technically. So when you see your P&L, it does not show the money going out for your loan payments on financing your equipment. It doesn't show the payment to inventory for buying all the vials. It shouldn't, if you're doing it right, by the way. It shouldn't show all those vials. It's going to show only what you actually used. So you're actually going to have dollars sitting on your balance sheet in inventory and in the loans. And you have to be able to pay for those things with the money you generate, with that net profit. The net profit has to pay for that. Inventory, loans, and you. So when you look at your profit and you're like, I'm barely profitable, this is a challenge, because when you're barely profitable, you may look positive, but you might have negative cash flow because you have to use all of that and then some to pay off your credit card bills, loans, and so on with that profit.
Yeah. Yeah. Such a challenge. I think it's so common with most
Mm-hmm.
of the practice owners I talk with.
Yeah. And I would say too, there's a difference between profit and cash flow in terms of how we approach both of them. And profit is really affected by anything on that P&L, anything that involves costing, anything that involves revenue, whereas cash flow deals with speed, cash that's tied up in inventory, too many things that are not covered by the operations of the business, and the slow collection of payments from patients if you're not taking a credit card, if you're not collecting quickly, if you're not collecting payment before delivery of service, for example, which most people should be doing, or right up before they walk out the door. So this is really, really key. And then I can go into how to actually measure this, but I want to see if you have any other questions.
Yeah, the question I wanted to ask, actually, it kind of just coming off of what we were just talking about and then leading into this, so I'm glad you came to this slide, is, if a practice looks successful from the outside, right? They've got a busy schedule, growing revenue, multiple providers, but you're constantly feeling cash strapped, which is, this whole thing of like growing month to month. Where would you start looking first?
Well, I would want to figure out like a decision tree. I would want to figure out, and by the way, every profit and loss statement for me is a game of Clue, and I love it. It's it's who's the murderer in what room with what weapon, right?
Oh my God, I love
So
it.
I like to say, is
Clue.
it on the P&L or is it on the balance sheet? Who's the murderer and with what weapon? So, and this is literally how I think about it, and it's so fun for me. Like I'm a nerd when it comes to numbers, and this is how I think of it. So first and foremost, if you're cash strapped and you're like, cash isn't in the bank, is it a profit problem or is it a cash flow problem? So I look at that as, is it a profit and loss problem or is it a balance sheet problem? How you would determine if it's a profit problem. Let me go back. So this is the possible weapons, okay? In my example, these are the weapons. So if it's a profit problem and it's on the P&L, it might be that you have to look at your gross margin. So you have to go down the P&L top to bottom and say, okay, what is my gross margin ideally per treatment, per service? We talked about this as one of my top 3 metrics. On a service level, so it's aesthetic treatments or injectables or surgery or other beauty treatments, things like that. What are my margins? And by margin, I mean, what are you bringing in? What are you paying for labor? What are you paying for materials? Stick with that for now. Then we figure out, okay, as a percentage of revenue, what is my margin? What you're probably going to find is your injectables are somewhere hovering between 40 and 50% on a good day. Your aesthetic treatments are between 60 and 70% on a good day. So every aesthetic treatment is a little bit more what I would call nutrient dense, AKA profit dense, than injectable. So just because you're booked and busy doesn't mean you're booked and busy with the same type of treatment that's giving you the nutrients in your business that you should. And I'm not saying you have to go full aesthetic and not do injectables. I'm saying we have to find an optimal blend. That's where most of it sits, is that you're booked and busy on injectables treatments, wondering where all your money went when you're really keeping 40 cents on the dollar every time a patient comes through the door. That's why we got to look at treatment plans. That's why we got to look at other elevated services, because if someone is only an injectables patient and never ascends in your customer journey, they're not making you any money. They're just taking up space, and you can barely afford your front desk like that. And so that's my first killer. Is usually it's margin erosion, where quietly the profitability is actually shrinking down. Poor compensation structures, paying your providers for idle time, being too nice, let's be real, with your providers, and being more of the, oh, but I care for them and I take care of them. Right. But we have a business to run. And then
Shannon,
obviously
I feel like
discounting and comping.
yeah, you're listing off all of the lessons that I learned the hard way when I was on the
Yeah.
practice side. We did a whole P&L analysis, and I told you this story, and I think I've told other people this story of like one of our services we offered, we found out we were making $1 per hour in profit once we put in cost of overhead, cost of keeping the lights on, all this wise. And I mean, I'm just throw money into the fire pit, right? Just burn the money. It's not even worth it. But it was such an eye-opening moment for us to be able to say, stop promoting that or get rid of it, and then change our entire marketing plan even to focus on the things that were that nutrient dense treatment, because then we had the clarity we needed to be able to say, oh my God, if we keep promoting Botox and fillers just to get people in the door, it's such a loss leader. It's not even worth it. Like we'd be better to bundle that into a treatment plan that has the nutrient dense thing with it.
It's no different than a diet, right? When I say nutrient dense, I mean like, every food has calories, but a Snickers bar and a sweet potato both have calories, maybe even similar calories.
One tastes better, but it is good for you. Yeah.
One is in higher demand, but one is better for you. And this is the analogy you need, because there's going to be there's more profit dense treatments that you need to be blending in so that you're getting the nutrients you need into the business to support you. If you are living off a diet of Snickers, then, things will erode. But it's like, but I'm eating all the right calories, like not in the right way though, not in the way that has longevity. And if you think of it that way, that's actually what a lot of practices are doing, is they're not nourishing with nutrient dense treatments for their business. And that's okay. They're just seeing all revenue as revenue number. But I'm like, yes, but all food is calories. There's a difference though. Yeah. So how are we looking at our treatments to understand which ones are better for us and more beneficial to help us build longevity? That is key. And then if you understand that and you are profitable, I would then move on to your overall profitability to make sure you're not overpaying in overhead and additional functions and marketing and other things. That's another thing where we look at a budget. Then if that's still
in the chat about that when you're ready.
Yeah. And then I'll just wrap up with, and then if that's not the problem, we move on to the balance sheet and say, okay, you're profitable, but you have no cash, meaning that the cash is leaking out through loans or you taking money out or another clue killer. So
yeah. Okay. So I'm going to start with, I'm just going to go in order the questions came in because the chat is getting hot, which I love. Thank you, everyone. Keep it coming. The first one is reward programs versus memberships because of that carrying the liability. Great question. Okay. Great question.
Okay. I am opinionated when it comes to memberships, because I think and I'm not going to go on a tangent about this fully, but I think a lot of people are not doing memberships right because they're copying another person's model and they're not doing it for the right reasons for their own. A membership or rewards program, number one, should incentivize people to go to the nutrient dense treatments. It should not enable people to simply get discounts on injectables that they're already buying at full price. That does you no favors. It needs to help elevate. It needs to help bring them into a treatment plan. It needs to lower the barrier of price to get them into more treatments. So if you have somebody who's coming in for a membership or a rewards program and they're not utilizing the variety of options, then the benefits, then what is it really doing? It's just cheapening what they're already buying. So there's that. Number two is when you talk about the memberships and the rewards programs and in terms of the accounting too, it's very similar to gift cards. There are different models you can follow. Like if you're on a membership fee, which I generally prefer, membership
Same.
fees where you're paying like Costco, that's a little bit easier because it's kind of like they pay for the year, you spread it over 12 months, easy to account for. Or monthly they might pay, easy. But if you're doing beauty banking, that's tricky because now you got to keep track of a bank by each patient. It's a lot of admin, a lot of tracking. It's been done well before, but keep in mind though, if you are doing beauty bank, what are your policies on if they leave? Like, are they going to get cashed out? And are you going to have that money?
Yeah.
So it's almost
becomes
like a
a
trust in a
liability.
way. It's a huge liability. And all of them are treated like a liability. By the way, anytime you get money and you haven't earned it yet, it's a liability on your books. And there's ways to account for that properly, but you have to keep that in mind that it's not actually revenue until you deliver the treatments, including rewards programs, memberships, things like that. So like you have to wait until you actually deliver these treatments to recognize revenue when they come in. But normally what I see is memberships have a fee and then they get a benefit of a discount and then they come in and they pay on site when they get the treatment, which does align those things. So usually it's a little bit easier to track.
Yeah, love that.
Yeah.
And I'm totally aligned with you. I have very strong opinions on membership plans and what you
Yeah.
shouldn't do. So that was a great question. All right, the next one is commissions for providers, nurses, estheticians, nurse practitioners, injectors. I get this one a lot when I'm working with practices as well. Commission structures are really tricky, and I think it goes into you want to take care of your people, but you got to crunch the numbers and make sure it makes sense.
You got to put your oxygen mask on first before helping others. Okay. So here's how I look at commissions. You have to start top down and say, okay, based on what do I expect this person to do? What types of treatments are they doing? What do those treatments bring in for me in terms of revenue, gross profit? What types of treatments are they, right? And I would like to aim for a 20% labor rate. Like if I'm paying a provider, I want them to cost 20 cents on the dollar for every dollar I bring in. Okay. So if you back into it, you can figure out here's how much I want to spend on them and then figure out what to label each component as. So if you want to make it a commission component, that's fine. If you want to make it an hourly component, that's fine. But what you have to do is figure out the ceiling of like, here's what I want to pay them. And I don't want to pay them more unless they do more. So if they are 60 or 80% utilized and their schedule is full of these types of appointments, this is how much money they're bringing in. I want them to cost me 20% of that. And then you can kind of back into, this is how we approach it. We back into, okay, what do I call that? What's the math here? And if you're allergic to math and you don't like it, call us, right? We'll do this for you. But we figure out what is the hour. Okay, how many hours did they work? What did they actually do? How many patients did they see? Okay, if we slice this up, you could call this $65 an hour plus 10%, or you could call it 20% commission flat. Keeping in mind fee splitting laws and all that stuff, disclaimer. But if you're looking at that and you're going, okay, I could either call it this or this, we kind of come up with scenarios on here's when it breaks, right? If you're doing this much, here's where this one makes more sense than this one, or here's where they start making more money than they want to when they are at 80% utilized, they're hitting the income they want. So now they're incentivized to do that. They're incentivized to book up on high profit services. And I would love if we did commissions based on a higher commission for certain types of services.
Yeah,
like
that's where we ended up
are
at
different
my
than
old
injectables.
practice. Yeah, we ended up doing that at my old practice with our nurse practitioners, where we had to get that granular because we realized not just with the nurse practitioners, but the estheticians who can only do certain things, the commissions were all out of whack. I think we changed them 3-4 times.
Yeah, and when they get really complicated, this is the other thing. If you're a practice owner, you really don't want to overcomplicate your commissions because at a certain point, when they don't understand how their commissions are paid and they don't understand how they're computed, we lose trust because they're like, I don't know how this is actually done. I think it's done to confuse me. I don't know if this is in my favor. Now they're like guard up, little defensive, and they're like, I want more. I don't understand how I make more here. It has to be clear and simple, and the path to making more has to be clear. So if they want to make more, they have the path forward. They know what behaviors their comp is related to, and they know what they're paid based off of. So they have the right incentive. If you build all that into the plan, it should work. But if you have providers who are constantly knocking on the door saying, I need to be paid more, it's usually a function of, I don't understand how I get paid more and how we both win together. And that's the conversation that has to be had.
Yeah, all day. Yeah, I
Yep.
can't say enough for make it simple, make it repeatable
Oh my
and
God, yeah.
understandable. I mean, we had a lot of different commission structures at my old practice, and there were certain people that every month we would have to explain it to them again and give them line by line exactly how it broke out, which fair, you should give them that transparency, but
Yeah,
it's
but there's a deeper problem if they keep
a lot of
asking.
admin time.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I think that covered the questions I wanted to hit. We got some repeats in here. But yeah, I think that's so great. So the margin, golden rule of thumb, 20% salary times 5, give or
What do you mean?
take,
Like
to figure out
the
like payroll and all of that. Like
yeah, so what I recommended was
you said 20%.
20% of revenue.
Yeah. Okay, of
Yeah,
revenue.
20% of revenue.
Okay.
So
Got it.
whatever you're bringing in, 20% of that should go toward your labor, and then we back out, okay, and then here's how we would break out the pay rates for each person so that we're maintaining that ratio. And so if we're making more, they should theoretically be working more hours, and if we're making more, they should be treating more. So as we go through those numbers, here's what they get paid if they accomplish X, Y, and Z. And we should base the pay off of here's what they're currently able to do. Like their current productivity will get them a decent amount of pay that will make them happy enough. But we should also be talking to them about their goals and saying, what do you want to make here? And then showing them the path to that through here's how much you have to be treating. And it has to be realistic, but maybe a push of like, you have to be elevating your patients into further treatments. You have to be like selling, you have to be treating at this level, at this frequency, and you have to be 80% utilized to be able to unlock that. And now everyone's marching toward the same drum and saying, this is all the mission. We're all trying to get 80% utilized. I don't like idle time. How can I fill my schedule? Who can I call? Who canceled 2 weeks ago or was a no-show? And I'm like, hey, can you come back in today? I have an opening. How are we incentivizing stuff like that happening instead of just passively just watching the clock go by because they're getting paid enough hourly to do that? Right? Are we paying them for time or are we paying them for productivity? So you have to balance out those incentives.
Yeah. One clarification point on the basing on revenue is that revenue the percentage of profit that
No,
you're
revenue and
calculating,
profit
or
are completely different. So revenue is what
okay,
you bring in for sales.
so that's just the top line revenue, what you sold.
Yeah. And I'm not saying pay, let me clarify. I'm not saying pay 20% commission to everybody. Like, please don't write that down. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm
No, no, no.
saying is that when you look at your profit and loss, when you look at your P&L, I want to see revenue, which is everything you brought in. Then I want to see minus direct labor, AKA providers, including commissions. It should be up there. So direct labor and direct materials, which is vials, supplies, whatever that you use in the treatment room or in the OR. So we're talking about like actual implants, actual tools and materials there, including all of the staff that are directly handling treatment of the patient. So all of that goes into COGS, or cost of goods sold, which is really cost of services, cost of delivery, call it what you want. All of that goes into coming up with your gross profit. Now, what I want is the component of that says direct labor. I want that at 20% for a med spa. I want that at 20%. I would actually like it. I would like it about that for surgery too, but broadly across the practice, 20%. So if you're looking at that and saying, it's actually like 28%, I'm like, okay, we have some bloat. So this is how you could diagnose that it's a little higher than healthy range here.
Okay. I think this is one of those things where it's like you could get really clue, right? Getting into the weeds and figuring out where that
now we figured out, that's probably where the murderer is. That's where I'm 8% over. And if I can recover that 8%, that goes right to my profit line. And that's my money I need to go pay my loans and stuff. So I got to figure out how to get that down. And we either have to figure out the relationship between what you pay your people and the sales and create the right incentives. We also have to figure out how we may have been overpaying. And a lot of people are overpaying in the way that they're expressing their compensation because it's too much of a percentage of sales that's getting whacked. Like if you're paying a 20% commission, I'll give you an example. Let's say injectables, because it's my favorite example, is patient comes in, they pay for their treatment, and then right off the bat, it's like 50% cost of goods. You're paying Allergan, AbbVie, you're paying Dysport, whatever. You're paying 50% off. Gone. Because it might be you're selling it for $12 a unit, it costs you $6. It's not that uncommon. So 50% right out the gate. Now I'm left with 50% left. 20% goes to the provider. Okay. Now I'm done with, I have 30% left to run my practice with. It's not enough. It's not enough. And that 30% left has to pay for front desk, that has to pay for your rent, that has to pay for your utilities, that has to pay for the laser payments, that has to pay for all that. That's not enough. Correct. Which is why, again, the injectables margins, it's baked in to be a very low margin service. So what I'm preaching is get people over to the 60 and 70% margin treatments faster, or market that better and get surgeries on the books, because those surgeries are like 70-80% margin. And that's even like depending on what you're paying yourself as a surgeon. If you're calling that part of your COGS, unless you're working for free, and it's like a 90% margin. But you've got to be looking at what are the actual things that keep profit in my business that I can use to pay my cash flow, and be balancing out a service mix that optimizes those. And with the labor, you have to be looking at how much of that is going toward labor and it's eating away at those margins. And that's key. It should be 20% across the board generally for a practice. But when you think about, but on an injectables level, that's way more impactful. It damages the margins a lot more than it does going from 70 to 50. You're like, meh, okay. With the 50% margins on my aesthetics treatments, I can pay rent. But I can't do it with 30% of my injectables. So it's a little bit, it's tricky.
Yeah, absolutely. So tricky. I think, we kind of touched on this a little bit already when we're talking margins, tangentially related, not just tangentially, it is related to that, discounting and promotions, right? Almost unavoidable. Let's dig into that, because that's something, as the former marketer in me, like we did a lot of that. It was a way to get people in the door, get hype, whatever. And then you get memberships that get discounts on top of it. So how can an owner tell when the discounting that they're doing has shifted from smart marketing to margin erosion?
What you're incentivizing with the promotion. So this goes back to, are you simply trying to accelerate cash flow, or are you trying to build long-time customers? So here's the thing. I just used that example of like the eroding margin of injectables, right? Where we're down to 30%. Now let's add a 20% discount. Gone. Yeah. Again, might as well flush the money, right? So we're keeping $10 for every $100. That's not cool, right? For a $500 treatment, I'm keeping $50. Great. So we have to be mindful of what treatments are discounted. If you're doing discounts, I'm personally an advocate for not discounting medical treatments. Personally, I've also never really respected, this is me as a patient, I've never respected a medical type of facility that tries to price shop. Because I'm like, I don't care. If I love this injector and I trust them to poke my face or to see me naked or whatever, I don't care what you cost. I don't care. If I trust you, I don't care, because I found my person. That you have to build that relationship. You can't go after fair weather friends because you're on a discount. And I understand the volume game of doing injectables and things like that, but are they really going to turn into long-term customers if they came in on a 20% coupon? No. That's my soapbox, and I'll stick with that. But when it comes to discounting, you have to be careful, because you have to be looking at membership benefits, discounting, promotions, whatever it may be, to drive clientele into your doors. What are you trying to get them to do when they come in here? Are you trying to get them to try a certain type of treatment? Are you trying to get them to incentivize to try maybe microneedling, which is that's great retention. I also personally love that treatment. So I love that for try to get them to try it. They'll get hooked. They'll keep coming back, and then they'll find other things to spend money on, more skincare, whatever, to elongate the results. And I think that's a great strategy. But I think a lot of people go for what's already in demand and trying to discount it. No, there's already a demand for that. Discount the stuff that isn't in demand that you want people to try, and lower the barrier and the price objection to getting them into higher margin treatment. Rather, and lowering the barrier even for surgical type things, educate them, right? Like lower the barrier for a type of treatment that maybe also comes with some, like it might be a great prerequisite to a surgery, or a great first, someone's interested in a facelift. Maybe you can offer them a discounted type of treatment that might, give them a bit of these results with a non-invasive side if they're a little bit nervous, right? Start them with the henna tattoo before you get the needle out, right? See what it feels like. But those types of things. And I actually love, hear me out. I really want to propose. There's an idea that I had with like a rewards type program. Think about hotels and airlines. Okay. They don't give you, like, for showing up, they don't give you like discounts on economy. What do they make you do? They make you spend enough money on economy or whatever, spend enough money with them, fly enough miles with them, right? Spend enough hotel nights with them. And after a while, you gain this thing called status. And then next thing you know, they're coming at you with like, hey, do you want a free night in Bali? And it's like, yes, I do. Thank you for that. Why am I getting that? Well, because I spent 60 nights last year traveling, and I gave them enough money doing the things that they want me to do that they're basically not making super money on. But they're like, hey, do you want to come spend more money and do this instead? Or like have this status and keep enjoying all these benefits and keep giving us more money? Yes, I would. And elongate my lifetime with value with them. I'm a Gold Elite Lifetime Marriott member because they keep giving me stuff. I don't even have excuses to travel, but I'm like, oh, I got a free night award. I got to go use it. And then I go spend it at the restaurant and all that stuff. So how can we borrow from that effectiveness? Because that's working. I say you find your injectables customers that are reliable, and you say, hey, because you've been such a reliable customer and you spent over $1,000 with us this year, or $2,000 with us this year, you've actually unlocked gold status. You get 20% off every aesthetic treatment for the next year. Yeah, I do. That's cool. Oh, and we have these exclusive gold status only type things like VIP, and you're going to get one free skincare item with whatever purchase. Oh, okay. This is great. Oh, and if you want to bring a friend, they can enjoy your benefit for a day too. Oh my gosh.
Oh, bring a friend. Underrated. Not enough people do
Underrated.
Not enough people do. That's like the secret sauce.
Thank you.
I'm just going to throw this out there. We did this for our VIPs, our top spenders. I think we did like a Valentine's Day campaign, right? To like feed the, the nutrient rich services during a normally slow time for those. And we would feed it by doing a VIP, like just our top spenders. I think it was like our top 50 spenders or something. We'd give them like $25, right? Like, what are you going to do with $25? And then $25 for their friend. Worked like a charm. And it was it was so low effort, so low cost for us, but people were tickled by it. They were
but the customers feel like superheroes because like they brought their friend, and their friend is like, thank you for this. It's so nice. And there's all this like good energy flowing around, and it doesn't feel salesy. And I think if you're also kind of allergic to the sales process and you're like, I don't want to sell them on more stuff. Like, what if you just took some time and go through your EMR system and find some of your top spenders for the year, and you just did something nice for them. You offer them a free treatment or bring a friend just because. Like, it doesn't have to be a formal program. Just find excuses to get more of those people. Yeah. And that's huge.
20 report.
Exactly. Be looking at that. But that's my little thing on profit is like, you have to be focused on what is actually driving profit to feed your practice, and not what is giving you the vanity metric of just sales, but what's the quality of sales that you're generating. That's the key. And then eventually cash flow, which is I think what we're going to wrap up with, is how to measure that aspect of it.
Yeah, and one more real quick, just ideas for value adds. And I think this one's so important for either memberships or surgery, because you were
Yeah.
talking a little bit about, what are the little things you can add in where you have that nutrient-rich service, but you just put the little cherry on top, right?
Yep.
And I think of plastic surgery, of pre-care and post-care, giving discounts on those or adding one
Yes.
free or whatever. To me, that's the way it's like you get your bread and butter, the big surgery, but then you're building that lifetime value of that client by giving them the taste of the thing that they're going to want to come back for more, but it also improves their outcomes in the process.
Yeah, and with plastic surgery in particular, is one of those things where your customer is your best advertising, because they're going to walk around with a new face.
So true.
The results are on their body immediately, pretty much. Whereas maybe med spa, it might take a little bit longer, or it might be a little bit more subtle sometimes. Like people don't walk around and ask me, "Oh my gosh, who did your like?" No. But if I get a facelift, 100% is who did that? Wow. Like, and if their friend went to you, they're immediately going to say, "Okay, well, when I'm ready, I'm going to that person." And I think the sooner you can get them on your list, the better, so that when they're ready, they're already getting your emails, right? They're already finding out and getting educated from you and building trust. And by that, I mean, are you then giving the patient that worked with you, say, 6 months, a year, whatever, of discounted treatments or a free membership to your program or whatever, a free prepaid for this, or like a free skincare credit, I don't know. And then here's one for a friend. And then now the next person who compliments it is like, by the way, I have this if you want to use it, if you're interested.
All day.
And that can help bring in zero CAC
nothing.
acquisition.
Yeah.
Zero CAC acquisition. It's awesome.
Yeah, love it. Okay, so we only have like 5 to 7 minutes left.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure, and I have the question I want to end with, if it ties in hopefully with what you have left that we didn't cover. And I know we left a couple slides on the floor here, but what is one financial habit you wish every medical aesthetic practice owner would adopt before making their next big growth decision?
Okay, so that ties into my last slide perfectly. So
okay, good. I was hoping it did.
It's actually this. So you guys have been looking at this on the screen the whole time. We're going to talk about how to measure and monitor your cash flow. So if you're feeling like maybe you're constrained by your profit, but even if you feel like you have profit on paper, you're not retaining enough cash in the bank, this is the habit that no one's doing that everyone needs to. And I'm going to be honest with you. I am an accountant. In my own business, like, how we all are like our own worst enemy with what we're experts at? Like, we're the one who doesn't do the thing that we tell everyone else to do, like some of you don't wear your SPF, maybe, but like probably do.
Are you calling me out, Shannon?
I know, but we all know better. We all preach it. And then it's like, oh, I sometimes cheat, right? Like, I know a lot of trainers who eat Oreos, right? It's fine. Here's mine. If I do nothing else, I literally maintain a weekly cash flow forecast for the last 4 years. It is the single thing that I actually look at in my business. I don't look at my P&L every single month. I have a good pulse on it. I feel like I get it. Like, I know what's going on. I don't look at it every single month. I know. This I look at every single week. And that's for that reason, I don't need to obsess over my P&L. I know my P&L is what it is because it's pretty consistent. This is key and that's because I have recurring revenue, a different model, but weekly cash flow forecast. Let's talk about that. What this does, and I'll show you an example, is it takes the bank account balance, the beginning cash, and it then takes in, okay, here's what we're going to bring in this week. Here's the financing company payouts. Here's the package revenue we sold. Here's the collections from surgeries. Here's what's coming into the practice. Here are the expected deposits. Then cash out. Here's what's expected to flow out of the practice this week. And it's not just expenses, you guys. It's your credit card bill payment. This is key. This is not your P&L. Your P&L will show expenses when you swipe that card. This will show you paying the credit card bill. So this is from the perspective of your bank account. When you go out and you buy something with a credit card, your bank account won't see it until you pay the bill. right? So this is key. This is from the perspective of the bank account. And this is why you guys might be seeing crappy cash because you're looking at the P&L, which isn't telling you what happens to your cash. This is telling you what happens with the cash. When does payroll hit? When does rent hit? When are we paying for new orders? When are we paying for marketing? When am I paying myself as an owner as distribution? When do I pay for my insurance? All these things. And we do this for our clients 52 weeks. We have the next 52 weeks mapped out. I know how much money each of my clients will have in the bank account next year, assuming they're bringing in these, these guests, I say guest, but like estimations that are very educated estimations on what they're bringing in based on what they've brought in historically, based on seasonality, and based on what currently they have in place for average credit card bills that they pay, loan payments, rent payments, and so on. We factored all that in week by week and said, okay, this is what your cash is going to look like. I would do this, what you're seeing on your screen. I would build this for yourself 6 weeks. That's it, 6 weeks. If you do nothing else but do this for yourself, you will have immediate clarity on your numbers, immediate ability to pinpoint here's where cash is leaking, and you might actually be able to figure out, ooh, I don't like that my credit card bill hits before most of my membership revenue comes in. You can go to your credit card company and change the date of your statement, and you can shift it. And then, ooh, that actually makes a difference where I never dip below 50 grand in the bank. I like that. Right. So you can actually manage this and engineer it. It's not just something you have to accept and deal with.
I love that. I feel this is such a beautiful slide. Beautiful. Absolutely adore it. Shannon, I can't thank you enough. This has been such a fun conversation. Like we're right at time. Cherry on top. Thank you so much for this conversation. I can't thank you enough. And chat, thank you so much for everyone that put your comments, your questions. So if you want to get in touch with Shannon, keep what you earn. You can find her on major podcast platforms, her website, all of that. This has been such an enlightening conversation. Love geeking out on the data with you and doing a little clue. But thank you. Any last final thoughts that you want to leave with everyone before we close out?
No, I would say just here's my little tidbit I love to say is when it comes to your money, if you're here because you're feeling struggling, you feel like you're struggling with your revenue or with your profitability, I always say we always typically jump right to marketing. And I say marketing is topical. And this is very key. Marketing is topical. You got to go beneath the surface and figure out the root cause behind these things, just like you tell your patients. Something might be happening on the surface. It's not a cream that's going to fix it. That's your marketing. What's actually happening is something below the surface, whether it's not drinking enough water, bad diet, bad habits, sun exposure. I like to figure out what's causing the beneath treatment, the beneath symptom, and then figure out how do we change that behavior so that you don't experience that again in the future. Just like you have your treatment plans, I have mine for you guys. So we try to figure out what's beneath the surface, and marketing is very, very seldom my prescription. So I'm just telling you, you probably think it's marketing, but I bet you it's just because you only notice the topical difference that it makes, but you can't see below the surface the way we can. So I would say get yourself some help if you don't have it, if you have any trouble reading your P&L.
Love that. And I'm going to throw out my key takeaway. Prioritize the sweet potato.
I love
all I
sweet
can think
potatoes.
about now. I'm like, Snickers,
Yeah.
sweet potatoes. You got to prioritize the sweet potato, even though the Snickers really good.
Yeah.
But that was fantastic. Thank you so much, Shannon, and thank you everyone for joining us for another amazing webinar. If you have any questions, please let us know. Reach out to Symplast or to Shannon at Keep What You Earn. And the webinar recording will be live sometime tomorrow. Usually Ronnie gets them turned around pretty fast, so you can watch it back at any time. But thank you so much for joining us and have a lovely, lovely evening. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Night.